Hello everybody, it's another Friday Night Photoshop. I'm Mike Leonard. Tonight I'm going to talk all about focus stacking in Photoshop. Now this is where we take multiple images and we set the focus to different points in the image so that we can then composite it and have the entire image in focus. So let's go take a sample of what I'm talking about. Here I've got this fence that I took a picture of, and if you look at this, and let's go full screen, you'll notice that just these parts of the fence is in focus, but everything coming toward me is blurry. So then I adjusted the focus and took another picture, and then I adjusted the focus again and took another picture, and yet again. You see I'm focusing closer to me each time until I get all the way to the end. So my mission is to get that entire fence in focus. And here's how we do it in Photoshop. So I'm going to select all of these. I'm in Bridge, so I'm going to select all of these. And the beauty of Bridge is I can go to Tools and go to Photoshop, and then there's this Load Files into Photoshop Layers. Now I need to see the layers, so I hit F7. And here I've got all of these photos all lined up here in layers. Now again, just as we saw before, this image, the top of the fence, is in focus here on the left-hand side of the screen. And if I quickly come over and look at this one here, this side of the fence is in focus, but this part over here is blurry. So my mission is to get the entire fence to be sharp. So now that I've got them all stacked here as layers, I'm going to shift click and select all, and first thing I need to do is to align them. And I'm going to choose Auto Align Layers. And in this case, I'm just going to use Auto. That's all I need. I'm not going to worry about vignette removal or geometric distortion. One thing that you'll find when you do this, when you adjust focus, the image is going to slightly zoom. So if we step through these, you're going to notice that the image is slightly zooming out. And you can see there's this invisible here around the edge. So when you do this, you have to take into effect that you're probably going to be losing about 10% around the edges. That's just a given. So now that I've auto-aligned these, and I've got them all selected, the next step is to come over here to Edit, and come down to this Auto Blend Layers. I'll choose this, and I'm going to have Stack Images with Seamless Tones and Colors. I could use Content Aware Fill to clean up the edges. As I just said, plan on losing about 10% around the edges, so we're going to crop in. So I'm not going to bother taking the time to do that. Now, depending upon the processor that you have, this could go really fast or it might take a while. So be patient with it. Photoshop is stepping through and is taking the sharpest part of each one and putting them together with a mask. And there it's done. We see the entire fence all in focus from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. And if we look at this, it's kind of weird. That part was sharp. That part was sharp. See what it did? That part was sharp, and so forth. What it did was it was able to determine the sharpest part, and it made a mask and put it all together. Now what I have left to do would be to crop this, and let's do a 16 by 9 crop. And I'm just going to start maybe up about here. I don't need those top ones. And I'll just draw the box down to about there. So I've got a nice diagonal, and I'll say OK to crop that. Now from here I could do some more adjustments. I could do some sharpening. I could bring this up into Adobe Camera Raw. In fact, let's just do this real quick. So this is the composite that I've just cropped. Now what I need to do is to flatten all these layers. So if I come up here to Layers and say Flatten Image, now I've got a single image. So once these are flattened, if I'd like to open up Adobe Camera Raw, I can do that. And maybe I could just do a quick auto. I like what that did. Maybe I'd like to take effects and do a little vignette around the edges, and maybe bring up the clarity just a little. And you can see this is affecting everything. And there we go. That's not too bad. I kind of like that. So you could see how quickly it was able to put this all together. Now, some of these fence posts are still a little blurry. If I'd taken the time to focus on each one, this all would have been a whole lot sharper. But I think this pretty well illustrates what it is we're trying to do for focus stacking. Let's go do another. Let's take a look at this flower that I photographed. There's this image here, and then there's this image, which more of this is in focus, but this is a little blurry out there. This one, and then finally this one. See, this looks really blurry, but these petals, they're very soft, but they're all pretty sharp. So again, I'm going to select all of these, go to Tools, go to Photoshop, and say Merge Files into Photoshop Layers. And there, we've got them all here as layers. Now once again, the two steps we have to do. One, after we select all, we have to auto-align the layers. And we'll say OK. Now let's just step through these. We're seeing the top layer here. Here's a layer under that, and then under that, and so forth. And you're noticing what's happening around the edges? It's getting a little smaller. So again, we're going to need to crop that out. So I'll just turn all these back on. I'm going to do another select all. These are all selected. So now I come over to Edit, and I choose Auto Blend Layers, and again, Stack Images. And I say OK. This is stepping through, and it's taking the sharpest part of each layer and creating a mask to only reveal that sharpest part. And there we go. That doesn't look too bad. And if I zoom in on this, we've got some nice detail throughout this part of the flower, the petals that are really soft. That came out looking really nice. So the next step here would be to go to Layer, flatten the image, and if I wanted to, jump into Adobe Camera Raw. That's Shift, Control, then the letter A, if you want to jump in there quickly. And I could just do a little dehaze, bring down the edges just a little. I could probably even bring up clarity, and texture's going to really make that sharp. There we go. That's not too bad. And I could do more, but tonight's discussion is really about the focus stacking. And I just wanted to show you how we can take multiple images and put them together to make one where everything is nice and sharp. It's a great way to make your depth of field such that everything is in focus. Now you might make the argument, Mike, why don't you just shoot this at f/22? Well, there's some trade-offs. First of all, your lens is not the sharpest at f/22. Most lenses are sharp between f/8 and f/11. The other thing is, you may not get everything sharp with a single shot. So by doing multiple shots, we can see doing the auto blend, we're able to get this to be sharp after the fact, and it's pretty simple to do. Let's do one more. Here I've got a Siberian iris that I took pictures of, and I simply pointed my macro lens down at this flower, and I focused such that the background is sharp. We can see the grass or the petals in the background are sharp in that image. I then turned the focus until a part of the plant, this particular one, popped and looked sharp. And then I turned the focus again. Now these petals over here are sharp, but now these are blurry, and so is the background. I turned the focus again manually, and now these petals are sharp, but the middle is a little soft there. And then finally I went to there, and the middle is now sharp. but everything out here is blurry. Now, there are some functions in newer cameras that will do an automatic focus stack for you. And you tell it how many frames you want it to do, where you want it to start and where you want it to end. It's pretty impressive. But if you don't have that capability in your camera, you can do it manually. And that's what all of these have been done that way. And so now I've chosen these images. I'm going to go to Photoshop. Once again, load files into Photoshop layers. And this is going to bring them all in as I need them to be. So now I'm going to select all of these layers. And I'm going to choose Edit. I have to do the auto align, remember. If you go right to blend, you're not going to get a result that you're going to like. We'll say OK. This is going to step through and line them all up like you just did. And you'll notice that this doesn't move around a whole lot, except for the edge. Because again, when you turn the focus, it does slightly affect the focal length. And it's just easier to do that than to worry about trying to adjust the zoom. Remember, you're going to lose some around the edges, so that's just a given. So now I go back to Edit, and I'm going to choose Auto Blend Layers and say OK. We'll give this a moment. And there it's just put together the sharpest parts of each of this to give me this one completed image with everything in the image sharp. The next thing I would do here would be to crop out the edges, obviously. So let's try making a crop out of this, and I'll do a 5:7. I think this might work pretty well, and it does. And I'll just double click that, and there, just by cropping the edges, I've just cleaned up the edges, and now I've got this flower very nicely, so I can now put this into whatever composition I might want to put it in. And it's all the elements that I want to be sharp are sharp. So that, in a nutshell, is focus stacking. And Photoshop has really made it pretty easy for us to do this. So now it's, if you're ever in a situation where you can't get everything sharp, well, just focus on something in the distance, focus on something in the near ground, knowing that you can put it together pretty quickly and end up with a pretty nice image. Let's just look at this full screen for a moment without any graphics around it. I'll do a quick Control-0. And that's not too bad. I like how this looks. Now, of course, this is pretty big, but if I were to make a smaller print of this, this would look very nice and much better than if I did a single shot. Here's one other benefit. Flowers, I always say, move 100 miles an hour. If you are trying to take pictures of flowers and there's any wind at all, they're going to be moving all around. If you were to try shooting this at f/18 or f/22, that means a longer exposure, and you're probably going to get some motion blur. So here's another benefit for doing the focus stacking, and that is we can take the images at a faster shutter speed to stop motion, and then composite them by doing the auto align, and our images will be even that much sharper. So there's an introduction to focus stacking in Photoshop. I hope you get a chance to give it a try, because the images you can come up with can be quite rewarding. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you again.